So I just watched episode 9 of season 2 of Andor. This is a continuation of my review of 7 and 8. If you haven't watched those, feel free to check them out. But as for episode 9, where Mothra talks to Bail Organa, and they decide, or I should say, Mon Mothra decides she's going to speak out against the atrocities on Gorman, because everyone's painting it like the Gormans were really violent and killed a bunch of Imperials, and the Imperials had to step in, when that's obviously not what happens, and Mothra wants to speak out on it in the Senate floor. And that's going to be such a rebellious act. She's going to have to escape and be on Yavin. But she thinks it's time, because she's like, this is the time to speak out. This is the time to act. And Organa's like, I'm gonna stay here because someone needs to be here, but you can do it. I'll get people to extract you after your speech. He has a plan with people to help her, but separately, Luthen gets Andor to go and extract her, because he's found out that Organa's group that's going to save Mothra is compromised and has an ISB agent in it. So there's two dueling groups that are trying to get to Mothra and want to save her from the Empire. All this planning going on here and whatnot. Mothra finds a bug in her office, so she breaks it, and she's trying to make a speech that she's going to say, and there's all this build up. I love this episode, by the way. This is one of my favorite episodes. I just love how focused it is. Everything's focused on getting Mothra out and her doing the speech. I love that focus. I love the way the stakes are so high, because if Mothra gets caught, she knows too much. She knows about Luthen, she knows about this, she knows about Yavin. She's connected to everything. The rebellion is doomed if she gets taken in by the Empire, right? Everything's riding on this, and then everyone's connected with Andor and all this, and it's in the Senate building, and she has to do a speech, and you're like, what's her speech going to be? Everything about it. I loved it. I loved how that was played, and the build-up for it was great. I mean, Mothra has this talk with Luthen. She finds out her secretary works for Luthen, and she feels very betrayed by that. And her scene with Luthen is so good. Oh, I love it, because she confronts him on the banker's death, and how quickly he was willing to kill her childhood friend to protect her from being blackmailed. Her not trusting him, and their confrontation, great. She's afraid of him, not trusting him, but he's like, I need to help you get out. And it's great. And at the same time, the Imperials notice the destruction of the bug in Mothra's office, so they're suspicious of Mothra, and everything's kind of swirling around and around and around. And Luthen talks to Andor, and Luthen and Andor are not on good terms, so they have their argument, and Luthen's like, I'm not ready to leave Coruscant left, and Andor's like,
There's still some bridges you haven't burned. We'll take care of that today.
Oh, it's fun. Fun stuff. So anyway, they get Andor in to the Senate building as a reporter, and he sneaks in there. Then there's the other group that's trying to get her, and they're all there, and then she does her speech, which isn't supposed to happen, because none of the senators were, they were intentionally not letting any senators speak that day, so that there wouldn't be outcry over the Gorman massacre. But Organa uses some bureaucratic mumbo jumbo Article 7 Section B kind of thing to get an excuse to get her to be able to speak, and she talks about how the Gorman massacre was a genocide, and that they're trying to cover it up. I like the speech about truth, which is very meaningful for this show and very meaningful for the story presented. I would have loved if there was just a little bit of evidence in what she was saying. It was very pathos. I would have loved just her to be able to drop some piece of kernel that no one can refute. Oh, a good one would have been if, because all the news has been reporting on the resistance that was having that protest as a violent protest, and her being like, it wasn't violent, And if she could have thrown in, like, you could hear singing through the thing and drawing that song as to be used as fuel, because they were singing, and I bet if they couldn't mask that singing on their little newscast, that could be used, just a little thing to throw in there to give her credibility, because although we know that she's right, her speech doesn't kind of include something to back that up. I just wanted just a little bit of that, but her speech was good and her performance of it was great, and she's dressed great. So just a great visual shot. It's so evocative the way it's shot. Oh, it's great. Love it. Then she comes off and Andor gets to her first and is trying to lead her and protect her, and she is not sure about him because she doesn't trust Luthen very much, and they are going through it, and he takes off his coat and she puts on his coat to kind of conceal her, and it's hilarious that works pretty well because she has such a distinctive sense of style that just throwing a coat on her is like, ah, yes, completely in disguise. But it worked. They have a confrontation with the compromised group that's also trying to save her, and he shoots a guy and then shoots another guy. And both times Mothra is horrified, which was such a great character moment because she's a sheltered girl who's done, who's basically been a senator her whole life. She hasn't witnessed murder. She hasn't witnessed violence, really. She's an idealist who has been working in politics all her life and hasn't really seen the gritty aspects of the rebellion, and her seeing that and seeing just one death and her being horrified of it, it just goes to show the violence before of just her simple, like, very human reaction of, even, these are deaths to protect her, like, these people are trying to kill her, and her just being startled and horrified that Andor killed the guy, to protect her. But it's so human and makes the horror of Gorman all the more intense because that was just one guy that was trying to kill her, and she's horrified, and there's this beautiful innocence to that reaction. She's just an idealistic woman that's trying to do the right thing and doesn't have that experience with violence. I don't know, her reaction is so moving to me because it paints the violence that the show has kind of made you grow a little numb to. I almost wish that that reaction was set before the Gorman death, because it kind of almost like recalibrates the death for the audience of like, no, you're right, like those are people he shot, right? Those are people in that Gorman massacre, and it's so much death, you kind of get numb to it, and that kind of reset and recalibrated that for a moment. I almost wish it happened before the Gorman massacre, just for that, or because of just how well that recalibrated the numbness you have to everything. It's great. Great acting, this is a very small, like 5-second long moment that I'm talking about, but it was like arguably my favorite thing in it. So good. So Andor saves her and she flies off. And then we cut to a scene, Mothra's cousin inspecting weapons in the military, and they cut to this gun, and then they cut to this guy, and the music is swelling. And I feel like a terrible Star Wars fan, but I swear to God, I don't know what they're talking about. I haven't looked online, so I don't actually know who that guy is. It's clearly someone because of the way the music and the camera work is portrayed. I was like, who is this? I'm sure I'm going to be kicking myself when inevitably someone in the comments tells me, but I don't know who that is. Oh well. So after they save her, they're like holed up in the safe house that Andor and Bix used to live in, which is a fun detail. She thanks him, and she's like, "What can I do to thank you?" And he's like, "You better make it worth it," kind of like what Bix was saying. We better win, that kind of thing. The Yavin military guests, I guess, want to take credit for extracting Mothra. So yeah, Andor gets no credit for doing that. And we don't actually see her land on Yavin, which I felt was a shame. This is another example of just disjointed character momentum. Like we're with Mothra. Mothra is with the rebellion now. She's broken away from everything she's known. She's a rich girl who has nothing but like the soft gilded cages of Coruscant, and now she's in the rebellion. I would have loved to see her touch down on Yavin and see Yavin, and also for Yavin to see her, because she gives them a lot more legitimacy than I think they'd be impressed by having her, because she's an actual senator. Like she gives the rebellion a lot of legitimacy by being there, and that moment would have been nice to see, because it would have kind of been a conclusion of that part of the story, and we were with Mothra. But they don't care about that. The writers do not care about the character stories. They care about the story of the rebellion itself. Like everything is just, it's kind of about the rebellion as a whole. And all the little personal stories are secondary and can be sacrificed upon the altar of this one big message that it's trying to say, which is an artistic choice. And I understand that. I think their message would have been stronger if the character stories were allowed to shine a little more. Personally, that's my opinion. But there's so much missing, even in Mothra's story, and they follow her character arc pretty well. Like there's a lot that they give her, but there's also missing stuff. Like her husband wasn't in this stretch of episodes, so one can presume that she just left him because they're in a loveless marriage. But I would have liked, like maybe during her speech, one reaction shot of her husband, like hearing that speech and realizing what that means. She's gonna get arrested or be with the rebellion, or just even one shot would have been enough. But there's so much dropped things with her story. We haven't seen her daughter and her now son-in-law at all. Who knows what happened to them? We haven't seen it since the wedding. What was the point of this wedding if none of that matters? None of it. It was only a backdrop for the banker very subtly blackmailing her for 3 episodes. That's if that was all that it was for, that was 3 episodes too long. We never even got to meet the son-in-law. The son-in-law is a non-entity. He could be a block of wood for all the writers care. They never at one point showed any interest in telling us like who this person is. I thought they were withholding it because it was going to be a reveal of like, oh, he's like a psycho, or maybe he's gay, or maybe he's something else that will make that relationship a little rocky or something. But they didn't do anything with him. They're non-entities. They're gone from the story. Like she's leaving behind her daughter and her everything, and the show doesn't want to remind us of that. She's just kind of gone. Whatever. Andor's character gets a hard character arc reset at the end of this episode. The whole of season 1 was him being like, I want to just get away, go someplace where the Empire hasn't touched. There must be places like that. And then he does that, and then gets thrown in prison almost on accident, and then goes through this harrowing thing, and then afterwards is like, I need to stop the Empire, and is hard on the Empire. And that was his arc in season 1. And at the end of this episode, he goes to Bix and like, I'm done, I want to get away with you. There must be some place. It's just the same thing he said to his mom back in season 1. It's the same exact thing, which feels cheap. The little character development you gave him, you're taking away. He's back to this. And also, he already knows that's not going to happen. He tried that. He tried to get away, and he got thrown in prison. It feels like a forced conflict. And then Bix, not wanting to be the reason that he leaves the Resistance, decides to just leave so he can focus on the Resistance. I mean, she said in her little farewell video that she's a coward, but oh my god, the cowardice. It's also so contrived. Like, she has never at any point had any problem with arguing with him before. She's argued with him nonstop, in a kind of married couple sort of way, but she's always been arguing with him. She's never had any issue with that before. But now, instead of just being honest and telling him, no, I think you should stay in the rebellion. I don't want you to leave. This is important, and I would choose this over our relationship. Instead of saying that like a freaking adult, she just runs away like a child, which is a character choice, okay, but it just feels kind of out of character because she hasn't had any issue being clear about her issues with him before. It's so contrived to get her out because God forbid Andor have a character he cares about involved in the story. God forbid. Just, if you want to get rid of her a good way that makes sense. It doesn't make any sense. So she just leaves him for the rebellion, and he's like horrified, and he chases after her but doesn't know where she is. And then in the middle of that moment, while the audience is sitting with that, the random military guy number one is like, hey, the robot you sent us to be reprogrammed, he's ready, let's go do that. And so you get pulled away from that, and now he's gonna have a new sidekick, the robot. I wish they had placed that differently. I think it just was so emotionally jarring. It's like Bix leaves, he's in this emotional thing, you don't have a moment to kind of sit with it before you're being dragged off to look at the robot that's going to be reactivated and will be his sidekick in Rogue One. Awkwardly placed scene. And then it ends. I liked a lot of things. I understand what it's going for. It wants to be like almost a bunch of snapshots in time showing the rise of the rebellion. So it's like a year later, here's the situation. A year later, here's the situation. And it's kind of almost stagnant in the moment. Not this stretch of episodes, because we got to see that Gorman massacre and Mothra being extracted. But in many respects, they're almost static moments where all of the motion happens off screen, and it's just like, here is what the situation is. It's very almost ambiance based. It's aesthetic. It's like, here is the aesthetic for that time. Here is the backdrop. It paints a magnificent backdrop of what's going on and tells its story through the world and the costuming and the background, everything about it. It's crisp and perfect and tells so much. And then, but the actual action is kind of in the background. The motion of the story is kind of still in many respects when it's telling it. And then so lots of things are going to happen off screen, and then we're going to have a new snapshot in 9, 10, 11, and 12. That's what they're going for. Very quilt-like storytelling. You know, it's kind of stitched together, and all of the in-between is kind of subtext, and you have to paint it in your head, which is artistically very interesting. And I like painting things in my head and kind of what is unsaid and what is this. Is very fun. It's very interesting. And almost all of it I am fine with, except with the character stories. Like the personal stories of the characters, I think, suffer doing it that way, just because of the flow, and we don't get to see certain characters make those decisions that make them who they are. Those decisions almost happen off screen, and then we see the fallout or react, like the result of their choices that they made off screen, right? Which is a deliberate decision, and I get what they're going for. It's not about the characters for them. It's not about Andor. It's not about Cyril. It's not about Daedra. It's almost about Mon Mothma, but not quite. It's not about any of them. It's about the rebellion as a whole. It's this monolith that they are building, and every piece is just a little piece of the puzzle. That's what they're going for. I get that. I get it. It screws with their pacing and it screws with their characters, but I get what they're going for. I'm excited to see where it ends, what the crowning top of that monolith is. The next 3 episodes are the last episodes, I'm going to guess, if it's anything like the previous season. I guess we're going to see the building of the Death Star, because I'm sure it's going to be 1 year later again. And I don't know what we'll see. It would be great to see Mon Mothra on Yavin, like doing rebel leadership stuff. That'll be fun. And if you want to see my review of whatever that finale is going to be, do subscribe. The next chapter of Bone Song is available. You can read the first 10 chapters for free in the link below. I recommend doing so. I enjoyed writing it, and there's a good shot of you enjoying it. Happy reading. Take care.